Traveling to Russia is kind of a taboo right now. Many people don't even know that it's possible at this time, and even less people know that there's a new, easy online visa for Europeans. You fill out a very simple form online, you pay, and you get your visa in 4 days. The only minus of this visa is that it's only for 16 days, but that's enough to get a taste of this huge country. We decided to visit the Caucasus region, and the easiest way to get to this area is to cross the land border from Georgia. The process at the border took a while because you could see that they don't see foreigners very often, so they weren't really sure what they should do, but it was smooth, there were no problems. They asked us a few questions, but nothing special, just about our travel plans and so on. So there's nothing to be worried about. You don't need to be part of any tour group. You can easily do it on your own, use public transportation or hitchhike around. It's totally safe. Going to see Mount Elbrus is a must. The road from Georgia will take you to the town Vladikavkaz, from where you can take a marshrutka to Nalchik, and from there another one either to this mountain town called Turniaus, or if you're lucky, directly to Terskol, which is the base for Elbrus. Or you can also hitchhike. People here are really nice and we never had a problem. From Terskol, you can start walking up the valley towards Elbrus mountain. You can easily walk up to at least 4,000 meters without any special gear. You can also ride a cable to almost the same spot, but that's not that much fun. You can spend the night up in the base camp, either in your own tent or in one of the huts that are around, and enjoy the great views, which we missed because we had really bad weather. If you want to see other places and valleys in the area other than Elbrus, you have to be really careful not to cross into the border zone, where you would need a permit. It's not that hard to get, but it takes a month to get it. So if you want to do that, you have to plan ahead. Otherwise, you might get into trouble. Another area that I really recommend in the Russian Caucasus is Dagestan. You might have heard some bad things about Dagestan. For example, during the Soviet era, many people from Dagestan and also Chechnya were deported to Kazakhstan and other places. And to prevent locals hanging out with them too much, the Soviets spread out a rumor that people from Dagestan and Chechnya are cannibals. But we haven't seen any evidence about that. On the contrary, people in Dagestan were so nice, so welcoming and helpful. To get to Dagestan from the Elbrus region, you will have to go back to Nalchik, where you can take a direct marshrutka to Makhachkala, the capital of Dagestan. It's a horrible, long, slow and hot ride, but it'll do the job. From there, you can take another marshrutka to Gunip town, which is the main area where most people go to. That was the last place we were able to get to on a public transport. There are no marshutkas or buses between the villages, so to get around, you have to rely on hitchhiking, which is really easy here. We never waited more than, let's say, 10 minutes. Or there's another option, which we didn't do because we didn't know about it, but we probably should have. We've heard that it's possible to rent a car for a really low price in Makhachkala. That way you have your own transportation, you can even sleep in it, and you're good for the rest of your trip. The town Gunip itself is really interesting. It was built high on a cliff, so there's a great view from there. There's a really pretty waterfall and a fortress, some historical buildings. Another really popular place is not far from Gunip. It's an abandoned village called Gamsudl. The place itself is getting pretty popular. Don't expect to be there alone. But it's really interesting and it's beautiful out there. It used to be a really big village with all the amenities, but then in the 50s people started leaving. The last person living there, the mayor of the village, stayed there until 2015 when he died. Another place to visit here is the Salta waterfall. It's also not far from Gunip and Gamsutl. It's also pretty popular. It can get crowded sometimes, but it's awesome. It's an underground waterfall. So you go into a cave and there's a waterfall coming from above, going through tunnels and rings. It's really unique. I've never seen anything like that. If you like unknown, adventurous places with no other tourists, I recommend going to the Lak region of Dagestan with its capital town Komuh and an oldest mosque in all Dagestan. We came here to visit a village called Chofkra, where people specialize in tightrope walking. The village is pretty remote and small, so to get there you will either have to find a private taxi or be really lucky like we got when we met a local guy who said who's never been there either and he was interested to see it, so he took us all the way there. You also have to be pretty lucky to actually see someone walking on a rope, because people are also leaving this village and there aren't many people left there anymore. Which is pretty sad, but it's a trend in all these villages. You can also continue deeper into the mountains and feel like a real explorer. We actually regret not spending more time in this area, because the area itself is really interesting and the best and friendliest people that we met during our trip were here. Another super interesting place is another abandoned village called Kahib. It's close to the town Hebda and it's huge. It's hidden in the valley, so you don't really see it until you're there. Well, once you get there, you can just walk through the former streets, houses, or even camp there, which is what we did. It's a great place. It's getting kind of touristy, but it wasn't bad. What was really crowded was another abandoned village called Gor, which is just around the corner from Kahib. It's on a cliff, so you can get a really good view from there, but you have to deal with crowds of tourists. And the place itself is definitely not as interesting as Kahib. So if you don't have time for both, just go Kahib and skip Gor. From here, you don't necessarily have to go back to Mahachkala, unless you rented a car there, but you can go in the opposite direction towards Chechnya, and on the way you should make a stop in Kunzach and check out their amazing huge waterfalls. If you decide to take this route through Chechnya, you should definitely make at least a short stop in Grozny, the capital of Chechnya, which is a super modern new city that does not fit in at all with all the other places, the nature, villages, wilderness and stuff. It's super weird. And there's a beautiful mosque there. Chechnya is also known as kind of a dangerous land, and people there are not as friendly as people in Dagestan, but we didn't have a single problem there, didn't feel anything dangerous, met many nice and friendly people. And one local family even invited us to spend the night with them. So you don't have to be worried about going there. From Grozny, it's really easy to get back to Vladikavkaz. If you still have some time left there, you can go to local mountains, explore local valleys, peaks, glaciers. The main place where most people go is Dargaus Valley. It's famous for its city of the dead. In the past, people used to build these stone towers as cemeteries. The towers itself look kind of pretty in the landscape until you look inside through a little window and see actual human remains that are still there. It's interesting, but really weird and creepy. Many people just go there and then turn around and go back to Vladikavkaz, but you should definitely check out a waterfall valley just around the corner from there. Especially if you're around there during some rainy weather, the place is just amazing. There are waterfalls everywhere. You can see glaciers glaciated peaks. It's a beautiful place. You can camp there and just enjoy your last days in the Russian Caucasus. If you want to relax before you leave and enjoy some traditional Russian treat, you should visit one of the typical old-school saunas in Vladikavkaz. It was a perfect end of my trip. From Vladikavkaz, you can take a marshrutka back to Georgia. There are marshrutkas leaving directly to Tbilisi from the bus station number 1. Okay, so that's about it. Enjoy your trip.